Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the East County Prep Football Report, Week 2 of the high school football season. Dave, what an exciting week. I think we got what we wanted out there in Week 1. Some great matchups in Week 2, some not so great matchups in Week 2, but as things start to settle out in these non-league games, things are going to shape up. And, well, we got some great games on the card. Again, we're going to be split, Dave, on these games this week. There's going to be 2 Thursday games, and the rest of the games are going to be on Friday. All right, let's move right into it. Dave, on Thursday, the highest-ranked team in the East County, the Granite Hills Eagles, are going to host the Valhalla Norsemen. Dave, you might find this hard to believe, but this is the only game between any team in the Grossmont Hills League and the Grossmont Valley League this season. That's kind of disappointing when you think about it. Do you think there's any way we can get back to playing more games between Grossmont Conference foes in the future?
I don't know if that's completely a coach's decision. Mr. Wilbur, CIF, I don't know if they all need to come into agreement on that. I'm sure really what it boils down to, though, is the coach and the team itself, I think. And I mean, this year, I mean, just look at this game, for instance. I'd like to see it, but it's a little lopsided. I mean, you can just see it with Granite Hills already being ranked, Valhalla not being ranked, although they're both 1-0. And then we can get down to strength of schedule and all that good stuff too. I mean, Valhalla played great. They played great against Hilltop. I think that was more of a toss-up game anyway, but Charles Bussey behind the reins, holding the reins, had a different look, a different Valhalla this year. And I'm sure they're all happy with him, the fans, the coaches, the players, that they are 1-0. Whether it was low scoring or not, my hat's off to their defense for playing well last week. But on the other hand, the Eagles played really good, and they played a phenomenal. I was there. I can tell you for sure that they played a lights out Poway team that's great on offense and great on defense as well. With that being said, Granite Hills defense held them to 86 yards. I mean, total offense for Poway that came in, I believe, ranked at 13 and Granite Hills at 12 before they played each other. And all I can say is that Granite Hills defense in particular, anybody out there that checked out the article, just the quote alone from Zach Burton pretty much sums it up of how that defense looks and how they played. And even the ambiance and the sound of the game too was they were definitely making some killer stops.
Oh yeah, it was a high profile matchup as Granite Hills won again, Dave. Interestingly, they've played, never going to throw out the pandemic year, right? But that was a spring season. But if you go back in the last 3 season openers, not including the spring season, Granite Hills has played Poway. Granite Hills has won by 4 points each time. So, unfortunately, Dave, the 1-0 record that you mentioned for these teams, that's kind of where the similarities end, huh? For the Norsemen and the Eagles, Granite has won 4 straight games in this series by a composite score of 175-30. So, the Eagles, they're the highest-ranked team out of all the East County teams in the first regular season county media poll. And great job by Valhalla. I agree with you, Dave. Valhalla, they said that it was a 14-game losing streak. It was only an 8-game losing streak. You might remember when Valhalla upset El Capitan 28-20. That was at the end of it was in October of 2019. That was the last Valhalla victory. And then, of course, the winless spring season. So, look, Dave, I agree with you. This game is not going to be close. But the one thing that Kellen Cobbs does is he likes to make sure that his players get a lot of experience, and they all end up seeing the field here. So the Norsemen will have their chance to crack the scoreboard, despite the fact that the Eagles have strong depth. Valhalla, this is still Valhalla versus Granite Hills. So Valhalla has experienced some success in this series, but I have to think that Granite's got this one probably by 5 touchdowns. But I challenge Valhalla. They get in the end zone twice. I would consider that a pretty good day.
Well, I was fortunate. I got to, because they all have practice. I was fortunate to catch Kellen, and some updates for that game too. They had 2 players out, in particular from the defense, and Hodges is still out for 2 more weeks, I understand. And some of what he touched on is that he hopes that they execute early, and exactly what you said, because he wants to roll out his other guys and get those second stringers a good look at. He's trying to build a team for the future too. At the same time, I my hat's off to doing that, and he did that well during the spring season. Joaquin is Tom. He's going to be playing a little more offense this week, as we saw last week. It was mostly defense, and not a whole lot of playing time like we see on both sides of the ball like before. He didn't mention anything about injuries or anything like that, but he's definitely going to be playing some offense. So that's going to help the score to go up even further, possibly, because we know how he runs. And let's see, pretty much, just like we've said already, Ramon, is, lights out defense, especially against the run. I saw play after play. He's absolutely correct. Every time they stack the box, you got Tanner and you have Burton, and then you got a phenomenal secondary. There's really little time to even step up into the pocket or to scramble when you got those guys coming off the edge. They're beasts. And
is there any word on Jordan Glaze? Because if I'm Granite Hills, look, if a guy is 100%, wants to play, of course you're going to play him. You only get so many opportunities to play a football game, but also if I have injuries, here's a chance I can, like you said, have him play a half and then get some others in there with some experience.
Well, that's exactly his plan too. He had an update on Jordan Glaze too. He will in fact be joining the defense. So as how much play he gets, I'm unsure, but he'll be back. And the last thing Kellen said, with that being said, things will only get better for Granite Hills moving forward.
Okay, so I put 5 touchdowns on it. Like I said, Valhalla gets in there twice. That's a good day. So you don't have to name a score. Everybody knows that the Eagles are going to win this game, and great to see Valhalla back in the win column. Go ahead, Dave.
Absolutely, and I think Granite easily by 5 to 7 touchdowns, and like you said, hopefully with their second string guys coming in, Valhalla will get a better chance to get into the end zone. And real quick, you were touching on that 2019. Wasn't that was that Baker that was making some big runs in that game against El Capitan?
Yeah, he was on that team. That Valhalla team, they got that win that day. But look, here they can name the score. I will say this about this series very interestingly, Dave. This century, only 2 games finished with a 7-point margin exactly. 2 games finished with a 7-point, finish, right? All the other games have been double digits, and most of them blowouts. Not always the Eagles. It's kind of 50-50, actually, since the turn of the century. But the average margin of victory in this series, with both Eagle wins and Norseman wins, 28.5 points. So let's see. If Valhalla keeps it within 4 touchdowns, good job, Valhalla. And Granite might have to actually make sure that they're ready.
Right. For sure. And then which one do you have next up? Is I think you're having a little technical difficulty with the frozen on your end? You're still frozen, sir. Okay.
All right. Sorry about that, brother. Am I back?
Yep. And
You got me all fired up because okay, maybe I should just. I hope everybody didn't tune out there. I'm sorry about that, Dave. Don't skimp on technology, as I always say. Dave, maybe I could play a little game with you, or we could see. Can you hear me, Dave?
Yep.
Okay. Maybe we can decide which game will be closer on Thursday night. Here is El Capitan hosting Hilltop. Now, it's going to be Military Appreciation Night. Anybody with a military ID or in a uniform can attend this game for free. How about that, Dave?
You know what? They, interestingly enough, I believe it was 2019, as we're touching on that year. I think it was against Coronado. They did a similar military. It was more of like almost like some drills. If you wanted to join the military type of thing. I don't know if you recall. I might have had some of the footage up with. Sorry about that. Dan Mitchell from Christian was just chiming in on some interesting numbers that JC had last week. Anyway,
can't wait to hear that.
So anyway, I don't know if you recall, but they were doing some little training exercises and with some weights and those ammunition boxes. It was pretty cool little thing that they had going on, but that's also equally as cool to have all the military coming to the East County game. But here, Hilltop, after looking at what they did last week and not just their record so much, but I'm not really sold on them too much. And I think this is another lopsided event. And after what Yoakley did, the Yoakleys did last week, between Antoine and Savi, I mean, Savi is just lights out. With that being said, as you and I both heard from, I heard from Coach Berner last night, maybe 10:30, 10:45-ish, anyhow, about that, which is definitely, if you look at the play, I wish we could put it up, but when he had the second string quarterback coming in,
the air.
Yeah,
kidding you.
But it was originally we put it at 95-yard touchdown, and I guess Coach Berner went over it in film several times because he wanted to analyze it himself. I mean, it's a tough, it's kind of tough to see, but I think honestly, Coach, I think it was maybe 93, or you said 93. I was leaning more towards 94, and I think even Doyle Barnes had it at 94. I forgot what you said, Ramon, but we talked about it pretty much in depth, looking at where the tackles are, where the guards are, and where the ball was placed.
Yeah, we probably spent too much time on it, but only because it was a great play. And of course, it was the 6th touchdown that Savi accounted for in the game. And that's why I was so, I don't know why I was so into it. He rushed for 2 touchdowns. He passed for 3 touchdowns, right? So he had a big night. He accounted for 6 touchdowns in the win over Canyon Hills, Dave. Now, El Capitan and Hilltop, you might say it's one-sided, and I agree with you. I mean, it looks one-sided to me as well. We do kind of have that common opponent thing going, right, with the Granite Hills, with Valhalla last week playing Hilltop. So, but I just want to remind you that remember this game, Dave, back just in 2019, El Cap lost to the Lancers 47-41 in Lakeside. And that's when Coach Berner's son, Ron, was the defensive coordinator of the Lancers. Of course, neither coach was too happy when the scoreboard got lit up for 48 points in the third quarter. But Savi Oakley actually played in that game and had a 48-yard reception. And that game was, 2 seasons ago now when he was a sophomore. So, look, the Lancers did get into the red zone against Valhalla, but Valhalla did a nice job turning them away. So I agree with you, Dave. This is one-sided, and I think the Vaqueros should win it by 3 or 4 touchdowns for sure.
I would not be surprised if by halftime El Capitan was up by at least 4 touchdowns, to be quite honest. And who knows, Coach Berner by that time might even consider also taking his, taking the Kellen Cobb's approach and, giving his Yoakley brothers some rest, some much needed rest. And, let's give that defense some credit also, though. Kenyon Crest, they scored 12 points on that defense as well. But I wasn't really sold. I mean, he got a new coach, new system. I think there's a lot of variables in that one. For them to even be there and pull it off with, from what I understand, they didn't have quite the numbers. Kind of what Monavista, we'll get into that soon. The low numbers over there at Canyon Crest. So anyway, with that being said, yeah, El Capitan easily, I would say anywhere from 4 to 6 touchdowns, of course, as well.
Okay, and you'll be checking out some of that action, I think. Interestingly, yep. Dave, I know you love these notes. These 2 teams actually played in a league game, in 2 league games back in 1959 and 1960 when they were both members of the Metropolitan Conference. I know you always love those old-time stats. Dave, speaking of old-time, the Helix Highlanders, they celebrated their all-decade teams last Friday and came away with a victory over the Mira Mesa Marauders. It was only 28-20. The columnist in the East County column predicting the game said it would be 27-20, and it was 28-20. So he missed by just 1 point. It was a big crowd. Mira Mesa did get 2 kickoff returns, 4 touchdowns in that one day, but it was Christian Washington. Right now, probably the leading candidate for the East County top player, but it's a long way to go. But he did have 200 yards in the opener, and he made 3 touchdowns in that game as Helix won against Mira Mesa. But they're going to have a tough game this week against Otay Ranch that certainly is a toss-up.
Yeah, my question there now, was this that I heard that is Washington is he injured? Is he a go? What do we know there?
Yeah, I expect Washington to be able to play. He was suffering from cramps several times during the game. Another show similar to ours said he was going to miss the game, but he was starting and looked great. But he did suffer from cramps later in the game. He had to come out, but he came in actually to score the Highlanders' last touchdown of the game after he had come out for probably the second or third time, or at least he had limped off another time. I think play had to be stopped once or twice for him, but it was appeared just to be cramping, as so many players suffer, I guess, this time of year. But the Highlanders have actually been admittedly saddled with some COVID situations regarding their personnel. And I did see lots of sophomores in the game against Mira Mesa. That's not to downplay the fact that they only won the game by 8 points. Like I said, Mira Mesa did score 2 of their touchdowns on kickoff returns, but that's part of the game too. It's your favorite part of the game, special teams, right? So look, the Mustangs are the higher rated team in the computers that you despise, but still they have a lot more talent, and Helix obviously is very, very close to them in the media rankings there at number 12. When number 12 is going on the road to play number 13, I can only expect a tight game. Now, one thing about Otay Ranch, Dave, is they pass predominantly at about a 2-to-1 ratio, and their quarterback threw for 275 yards last week as Otay Ranch won at Madison 19-14. But the Highlanders have great speed in the secondary, including CIF track champion Adrian Parker, who had an interception in the game against Mira Mesa, and the Highlanders also had a pair of sacks.
My question is still for the Highlanders, though, and as we've discussed prior, we need a little bit more information to be more accurate. However, I mean, what's the quarterback situation is still suspect as far as I'm concerned. I mean, like you said, with the good secondary and good running game, you can still win games. But I would think that passing game still being suspect. I would want to have more information on that to really be accurate. But even with Chris Washington, I mean, he's over 100 yards, 200 yards, and I think he's just going to continue at that pace. I think it'll be close, but I don't know. This one's probably one of the more tough ones. I would probably it would almost be a toss-up for me. It could go either way.
I can't pin you down on a pick.
This one's too tough. I think that they both have their they both, I think they're equally as good, as you can see with their 12 and 13 media rankings. So I'm going to have to pick them on
You
this
have
one.
to pick, or I'm going to turn this thing off and never come back.
All right.
Who is it, Dave? Helix. You got to pick. I'll make you pick Helix.
I'm gonna say Otay Ranch wins it on by 3.
No, I don't have a problem with that. I have my concerns. I certainly have my concerns about this game moving forward, but I feel like the Highlanders have to win this game because they have a brutal schedule coming up. Certainly the urgency is there. Now, as far as the quarterback situation, I'm here to analyze that at least the best I can, not knowing exactly what's going on, but from what I see, and now I might have erred in the beginning, Elijah Ortiz may be in a sit-out period right now, and that's why he wasn't taking the field, and Rylan Jesse, who did prove at least efficient, if not effective, in a 10 for 16, I believe, performance for modest yardage, and he did complete several passes, and once again, no interceptions from him, which continues to be a theme. Everyone, he did struggle with some picks early in the spring, but then seemed to straighten that out. So not making mistakes for Jesse right now, I think, is important. So I think that the situation there is fine. Obviously, Washington is a workhorse back, and they do need to find some other options. Cramping is also a result of a kind of overuse, right? I mean, you've been really going at it, and you've lost your fluid. You've been going at it, and he's an incredibly durable runner. I mean, there might not be too many like him in the county handling that many carries. I think it was 27 on opening night. So these two teams haven't met in 12 years. Not much to say about that. But like I said, the schedule gets very, very difficult from Helix after this. They could be staring another poor start if they don't pull off some upsets. This game is a toss-up. Maybe they're even an underdog, like I said, in the computers, but Helix is still Helix, so you got to consider them the slightest of favorites. But they're not going to be favored in any of their next games, I don't believe. Maybe even against Saints. Maybe against Saints they will, but Helix could be looking at just 2 or 3 wins halfway through their schedule. So I think there's urgency there, and I've got Helix winning this one. They have to win it by a point.
All right. I just I think that, I mean, Helix and Grossmont both have very, very, very incredibly tough schedule. Not to say that Granite doesn't also have a tough schedule. If anybody, Steel Canyon probably has this. I wouldn't say a simple schedule, but they probably have an easier one compared to the 3 of them. But Grossmont and Helix definitely take the cake as far as difficulty in playing some top-ranked opponents. But again, I definitely have. That's what I wanted to get into. If you compare to what's going on, even up at the college ranks and the NFL today, as opposed to back in the 80s and 90s, no one really uses a workhorse as a running back anymore. No Edgerrin James and anybody like Terrell. Nobody does that. Now they use running backs as a committee. You have 2 or 3 backs. They last a couple of years, and they're a lot more durable as far as they're, I wouldn't want to say a dime a dozen and ruin the running back position, but it's they're just whoever can be fresh to get those couple of yards, and in different situations, if they have inches to go, of course they're always going to try and bring the big boy that'll get that extra couple of yards. But I just find that interesting now that the running backs, they play a part, but that overuse though has proven to it could definitely bite you later. But
well, to me, it's just Washington is that good, and they need to rely on him to make not only tough grinding yardage, but they also need those breakaway plays, which they did get a couple of those from him in the game.
Absolutely, you don't want to injure your workhorse when he's the scoring machine that he is. So anyway, like I said, this one's gonna be a close one. I got Otay Ranch by 3, and what do we got next?
Well, I should have saw it coming last week, Dave, when Steel Canyon was playing Eastlake. The score was a lot lower than I did expect a defensive game, but 10-6, the Cougars ended up losing to Eastlake, number 6 Eastlake. So Steel Canyon starts off 0-1. I don't have the records up there on the game, but both teams are going to come into this one with an 0-1 record, Dave. Steel Canyon did have 3 interceptions against Eastlake, including a pick 6 by Spencer Campillo. And Major Gibbons, he rushed for over 100 yards over that titanium defense of the Titans. So this one I expect to be also very low scoring, with probably just 2 or 3 touchdowns in all.
Well, those Madison games have been close, whether it be anybody from the hills they are typically playing, whether it be Grossmont, the lights out one that you had a couple years ago, and I think that if history repeats itself, all of those Grossmont Conference games against Madison are always close and nail biters. Madison's always Madison. They always put a good product out on the field. And I don't have as much information on either one, but if I were to look at just narrowly losing to Eastlake last week, I think that Steel Canyon could definitely pick this one up this week. It's going to be a close one. I'm going to say Steel by a point.
Yeah, and you do have, again, just like looking at Valhalla, Hilltop, and their opponents on Thursday, you kind of can look at the fact that Madison played Otay Ranch, which is Helix's opponent this week. Madison's versatile James Tavio scored last week in the loss to Otay Ranch, but the Mustangs passing toasted the Warhawks late with a big pass. And Steel Canyon doesn't have that right now. Their quarterback situation also is a little bit muddled. I was unsure going in, and they definitely split the time with the 2 quarterbacks last Friday. It looked to be a first half, second half situation, but the Cougars did very little in the passing game in their game against Eastlake. But Dave, I will remember this. Back in 2019, Steel Canyon played Madison, and that's when Madison had Keontae Springs. And Steel Canyon won that one 19-14. So I think a low-scoring game. Steel Canyon has to win this one. I got them 14-7.
Yeah, again, if history repeats itself as it has year after year, every time they play any of our Hills teams, it's a close one. So I think Steel Canyon really, just like Helix, I think Steel Canyon needs this one. They both need to stay up with Granite and with Grossmont, and we'll get into that soon. But because Grossmont has a tough order, or a tall order, I should say, this week also. So I'm going to say that I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Steel Canyon by a touchdown over the Warhawks.
Okay. Well, you called it, Dave. Gross Spot has the toughest opponent, I think, right, of any of the East County teams this week as they're taking on number 5 El Camino. But hey, you know what, Dave? Gross Spot's going to be at home in this one, and they're coming off a terrific victory. Dave, how about senior Ryan Roddick? He caught 3 touchdowns. He threw for another 37-14. Grossmont over Sweetwater. And Geo Burns, he almost returned 2 punt returns. He was just maybe 20 yards short of having 2 punt returns in that game. Trenton Giles looked great at quarterback, and the defense looked really good as well, led by Brennan Sanders and company. So El Camino, they had to rally in their opener to beat Saints. They were losing 13-7, but El Camino, who, by the way, lost their starting running back to I believe a serious season-ending ankle injury just 5 minutes into the game, but they have plenty of talent beyond that. So respect to him, get better, but they have great players to back him up and everywhere. And El Camino won that game 21-13 over the Saints behind quarterback Kaya Reed. And they put Dave, you talk about big men running the football. To make up for the loss of their starting running back, they took one of their linemen, put him into the game. He had 8 carries for 33 yards and a touchdown.
Wow. Yeah, but I'll say at Grossmont this last week. Now, I understand that the division that Sweetwater is, and they were definitely an inferior opponent. But as you mentioned, Roddick, he had some great ones. The one I want to reflect back on, though, is the one where Gio, he stepped out.
Did he step out, Dave? You were there. I mean,
he did. He just barely. It was so close, but it. In real time when you first catch it, I thought that he made it, but I immediately reversed my video cut, and sure enough, I found it pretty quickly. Yeah, he stepped out probably half of a shoe. So
Burns is explosive, and also watching, Lincoln, they returned some kicks against Monavista, and I know it's hard. Punting is hard, and it's hard to just get the ball down the field, much less direct it. But man, why I would try coaching so hard to kick the ball out of bounds, especially when you are an underdog with outmatched speed. I would try not to let players have a ball in an open field at all. Kick that ball out of bounds if you can, or squib it, or deuce. I don't know what to do, but when guys like Burns get loose.
It's funny you mentioned it. I got some bits and pieces from Coach Chris Holmes from Grossmont. Pretty much asking him what are going to be the keys. He said his exact words were high levels of execution in all 3 phases of the game in regard to El Camino. And they're a team that he says that they can't help them out, helping a good school out, can't turn the ball over and give them an easy 6, so they definitely got to retain the ball, hold on tight, hold on for your life. And then he also mentioned, controlling the clock, keeping you definitely do want their offense off the field as often as possible. So the clock, I think, is going to be key for beating El Camino for sure. I think that's the biggest key of all. And then just playing all 4 quarters. And I mean, come on, this is something we would say too. And it's exactly what Coach Holmes echoes. And this will be a huge test for Grossmont to where they are as a team in all phases, and how the rest of their season could go from there. I mean, because they, with Cajon on their schedule too, it doesn't get any easier. Like I said, they got the toughest schedule. But he says, he's got playmakers, and I saw those playmakers. And that don't count that defense out either. They're another team that's really good on the run. So
Yeah,
I don't see
Sweetwater's a running team, and Grossmont. I mean, remember Sweetwater had a winning streak. They won all their games in the spring. All of us, they got this running game. Look out for Sweetwater. We know they're from a lower division, but they looked great, and everyone was excited about them. And there's reason for excitement still. But you're right, Dave. Grossmont's defense put that. They didn't do anything, quite honestly.
Ryan Odom, just to name one that comes off of the top of my head, but they just weren't doing any, and they weren't even testing that secondary, to be quite honest, and they just kept running into brick walls. I mean, I lost count of the punts.
I hope I got all the names right this week. I'm not sure about the roster I have for them, so shout out Grossmont. Make sure, or I don't know, do what you want to do, but want to make sure I get all those names right. And I wasn't sure about some of those players that made some great plays on defense. I don't know if I have all of their names quite right, so maybe I need to work on that a little bit. So, Dave, look, my ratings kind of have Grossmont as much as maybe a 3-touchdown underdog. I'm going to give them a little bit of benefit that they look like, let's give them some points for that impressive victory. El Camino loses their running back. They had to scramble to win against Saints, mind you. Great program, but they did end up winning the game. So maybe it's more of a 2-touchdown game. And if Grossmont can play well, they can keep this within a touchdown and stay in the game throughout and have a chance to win because they have some pretty great talent.
Because it does have defense, it was a hard one I was looking at from both sides because they do have both of them have high-powered offenses, but they also have great defenses. So with that being said, and the talent on both of the teams, let's not discredit Trenton Giles either, because I'll tell you what, it's not just the receivers running the correct route. I mean, his timing was impeccable. All those passes that he was throwing, some into coverage, even sometimes double coverage, and he was threading the needle with ease. So I'm gonna give Grossmont the upset, and I'm gonna say the Hillers win this one by 3.
If Grossmont does win, it will be the biggest, I believe, upset of the season after 2 weeks. It'll be big news, and we'll be here to champion it as the lead story all weekend. That would be huge. I've got El Camino winning. I will say by 2 touchdowns. I challenge Grossmont, keep it within 1, and that would be great. And do not lose it by more than 2 touchdowns. Anything can happen here. Hope you're right, Dave. So I've got El Camino winning. I think that's my fair call. How's that?
El Camino is a great team. And then of course I'm going off what I saw live from Grossmont.
And both teams 1-0. The graphics, we're going to fire the graphics guy right after the show.
Oh, and I want to also add one more thing though. We're not keeping track yet, but because we'll get into that when we get to West Hills, that I blew really badly. But I want to let you know that I did say 35-14 would be the final score between Sweetwater and Grossmont. I was a safety off, so I was almost near perfection on that one.
Okay, so you and I both had one that was extremely close last week. Dave, the Santana Sultans off that wild game in overtime. They didn't even know they were supposed to play overtime, but they won 10-7 against Coronado. How about Dylan Anderson? He saved the day with that 92-yard kickoff return with 8 minutes left in the game right after Coronado had scored the first touchdown of the game in the fourth quarter, right? So speaking of Wright, Ethan Wright does the job at quarterback. The starter did not make it to the start of the game. I believe he was injured. You're going to fill us in on that. I can't wait to hear what the situation is. But also, I want to shout out Jackson Scott, another hero. He kicked the game-winning field goal. Santana wins it 10-7. Big win, really big.
You know, and it was in the article. And if folks, if you didn't read it, you really should. It's a good read, and I wish I would have been at that game. No, I keep going back to, and I've talked to Ramon about it at least 2 or 3 times, I'm sure by now. And that's a fact that we didn't. And then you, in fact, told me that you would look back, and Coach Tim Estes, as a head coach of the Santana Sultans, had never had a tie against an opponent, which is, I got to say, that's a very interesting stat. And the way that he he described it, he did have to get on the phone because he didn't know how to proceed. I mean, with good reason that it hadn't happened to him as a head coach. As you mentioned to me, though, he might have been on a team prior to that, and he was saying from 2000 on, he's never. So for the last 21 years, when he was head coach, he had never seen that.
It might have been, and I never didn't get all the way. We didn't get to maybe all the way finish investigating what type of situation they may have been in that he might have been recollecting. But you remember there used to be a playoff system, but I think it was before he was head coach, but he might have been, is when the teams were tied and they were in the same CIF division, they would make them play the little overtime period, but only if you were in the same playoff division. It was strange. So sometimes teams, well, I think they kind of knew when they were supposed to play the overtime, but they'd have to, like, hey, are you in Division 3? Yeah, I'm in Division 3. Okay. Or whatever division it was called back then. So maybe it was one of those type of overtimes, but we couldn't find an overtime. But this one was thrilling. I mean, Anderson, the kickoff return to tie the game right after Coronado had finally scored, and the Sultans winning on the game-winning field goal. So Montgomery's playing their season opener, this is going to be a good test for the Sultans. But the Aztecs, they were 4-1 in the spring. They have a first-team all-league quarterback and a good mix of veterans and young talent, but they've been, like some of the other South Bay teams, a little bit slow getting things going with COVID regulations and the team. So I think that does favor Santana a little bit. The computer has Montgomery as the favorite, but I've got to think Santana's got a big chance to win.
Well, yes. And talking to Coach Estes, I mean, the way he looks at it is it's kind of a flip of a coin, because he didn't have any footage, as they didn't play a scrimmage, a practice to watch, nothing, because of a little bit of both is what Coach Estes said. The numbers of the players on the team, and then also, of course, the COVID that's going on in the South Bay, and it is, as you had tweeted out about the masks also being worn down in the South Bay. So really, Coach Estes was saying that he didn't really have anything to go on, but the prior year, the spring, he had that to go on, but not really a lot of information. Not sure on all of the personnel at this point, is what he was saying. And he doesn't know if they're going to, the way he put it, I don't know if they're going to come out firing on all cylinders and just running up and down the field, if they're going to be gunning it down the field, or if it's a rebuilding year. He's not really sure. So it's Santana looking out for Santana, and they're gonna play the way they play. And with that being said, Nick Ledger is going to play, but he's going to split the time with Ethan, right? So that's the way Coach is going to play it for now. But Ethan will be in the backfield no matter what. So
okay.
Either way, he's going to be part of the offense regardless.
Well, it's funny, Dave, because, Wright, look, we talk about Anderson, Jackson Scott makes the field, but to me, Ethan Wright, even though the Sultans didn't score, he saved the day, right? He had 157 total yards, and, we know Wright can run the ball, and when you bring a backup quarterback in who is a runner, you expect him to do some running, and he did just that, but he also completed 11 of 25 passes. Now, that's not a great completion percentage. For high school, it's not terrible, especially when you're the emergency backup, the emergency starter. They got called in. They asked him to throw 25 passes. Now, they were of the shortened variety. He didn't throw for a lot of yards, but he got the job done. And I think that, I don't know, he was the unsung hero, I'm sure, of that game.
Well, look.
And he's earned the job. He's earned half the playing time now. Whether or not,
look,
go ahead.
Ethan is also, as we all know, any of us that follow the Sultans, he's also a phenomenal baseball player. Okay, so they got a great athlete. So I think that comes into play as well, and I think that's also the reason, he probably said, yeah, I can do it, and that's what we get out of those multi-sport players like himself. He's an athlete, and he's going to compete. He competes in baseball. That's I'm sure it's his sport. I don't know because I haven't asked that question personally. But with that being said, like you said, at the high school level, 11 to 25, not too bad. And being called upon and not and being the emergency backup, as I want to stress that also, he was as ready as you possibly could be. So what the kind of job that he did on the field, I think he should be commended for sure.
No doubt about it. I'm going to take the Sultans to win this one, Dave. Again, I agree with everything that you guys say about this game. We're just not sure what we're going to see from Montgomery. Like I said, the computers do have Montgomery rated higher, but look, you kind of make fun sometimes of the all-time series, but sometimes it's relative, right? Santana leads this all-time series 7-1, 5-0 this century. So you compare two teams, that when these teams get together, 5 wins, no losses since the turn of the century.
Well, and I just wanted to add,
Jackson Scott's going to win it. Jackson Scott, he's not my real cousin, but he's my field goal kicking cousin who's going to win this game probably with a game-winning field goal.
I wanted to add one little tidbit to that too. And Coach Estes tells me this at the end of every conversation that we have, whether it be Friday night or, midweek for this show. He basically, every week he said, I'm just glad to go out and compete. I'm glad that my team can go out there. I'm glad that we can compete and we can play the game that was scheduled. And that's really his philosophy. And here's a problem he has at teams like Monavista, Mount McGill, and probably Montgomery. They have the problem of getting people to come out and try out for the team. Over Santana, he said he's got so many that he's going to have to, pretty soon, he's going to have to tell them to stop coming out and trying out. Now, imagine having that problem. I think every coach would love to have that problem within the, not just within the conference, but in San Diego County. So I thought that was an interesting fact too. And that they have great numbers just up the road at West Hills too. So it's just great to see that there's so much football between those two schools and having so many interested athletes. But I got Santana. It was a real hard one because, like Coach said, it's a toss of a coin, but it could very well be a similar deja vu of last week. So I'm going to say Santana by 3.
Okay, we both have Santana by 3, it sounds like there. All right, Dave. Hey, Dave, West Hills recorded its second largest margin of victory in a shutout. They beat Kearney 55-0 last week in the season opener. West Hills' only bigger shutout victory, they beat Montgomery back in 1995, 64-0. That West Hills team went on to win the Grossmont North League Championship.
Was that Coach Sutton years?
I think so, man. They went, I think, 8-2, 10-2 that year. I think they ended up losing in the playoff, but that was a great year. And I think West Hills, I think we could agree, they got something special going on right now with the Wolfpack. Braden Oberg, the senior, 3 touchdowns, 2 to Max Conaway, and Dylan Snyder, he rushed for 2 touchdowns. or he scored 2 touchdowns. He rushed for 1 and passed for 1. But more excitingly, Dave, the Wolfpack had a scoop and score on defense on the first play of the game. Then they had another one, right, on a blocked punt that was picked up and run back for a touchdown. So West Hills thrilled on opening night in front of a big crowd in West Santee.
Yeah, my son said it was ridiculous as he was in the stands. I think he clocked it at 15 seconds before the Wolfpack scored their first touchdown, obviously on the muff kickoff. What I wanted to say also is from what Coach Ash had told me, it was what was it? He said it wasn't necessarily a blocked kick. He said it might have even been just a 3-yard punt. Like he
I don't know. There was a big Pack player in there. It seemed like he put his paw up.
I don't know, that came from Coach. So he, you know,
that's fine.
But the bottom line is, and let's give it to the special team, all 3 phases. Dylan Friend, I mean, he did some great things. Also, Trevor Abimbo, and then Cohen also. I mean,
Cohen Benavente.
Yeah, he was
the one that picked up the first fumble and ran it in.
Yeah, he was impressed with the whole group. He said, I mean, bottom line, and he's been coaching for years. So his bottom line was, you need to win these games. These are games that you have to win, and you have to win big. I mean, they're and I think for the second week in a row, if they play like at the level that they played, and with the players that they have, the talent that they have on this West Hills team, which I think has gone undetected, and I don't think they've been given credit where credit is due, which I think Coach Ash actually likes that, to be quite honest. But you know, we got these desert teams that I know Coach Ash, I one year, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, he mentioned that he likes to set up those desert teams, and they come out here and then he'll go out there. But he said that it really, that's one of his tests is playing those desert teams, because they'll come to West Hills, but eventually they're going to have to go, maybe next year they'll go to Imperial and play in some severe I mean, we thought it's going to be 99 tomorrow, possibly at kickoff at El Capitan High School. And, you know, we look at some place like Imperial, that's probably at 115, 120. But with that being said, I think that West Hills has the upper hand. Not only are they 1-0, a big 1-0, made a big statement, and I think they're going to make another big statement. And I wouldn't be surprised if they win by at least. I'm not going to make the same mistake I made. Sorry, Coach Ash. I blew it last week, and I said 7 points. I think West Hills has got this one by a minimal of 4 touchdowns.
Okay. Well, I think I called for a one-sided game last week for the Wolfpack.
No, you did.
I didn't.
You did.
I don't think I said a score. I think I didn't want to say a score because I thought it was going to be too large of a blowout. I think I said.
I dropped the ball. I don't know why I said 7. Maybe it was a lack of rest or whatever it was. But anyway, sorry, Coach.
Well, Dave, you mentioned, going out to play Imperial. West Hills just did that back in 2018. Remember, it was 7th seeded Imperial, 10th seeded West Hills, and it was 25-0. Imperial won that game. It was a Division III first-round contest, and West Hills lost that playoff game. But the Pack did win a playoff game back in 2014 in Santee, 41-27. And what you said about them going back, I don't know if that's part of the deal. Probably is. This is the first time these two teams have ever met in the regular season. Now, Dave, remember, Imperial, they haven't played yet, but they had what I thought was a good scrimmage showing against El Capitan. But Coach Berner talked me down a little bit and said, you know what, we ran our second team. I don't know if you want to say it like that. I mean, he's not going to, but he said that, Imperial wasn't necessarily getting El Cap's best the entire game, especially when Imperial came back in the second half kind of to win the score on the scrimmage. But they still have inexperience at defense and at quarterback. So I think West Hills wins this one. I'll be the one that picks the lower score this time. I got West Hills by a couple of scores.
But let's just to add to that, it was also in the article regarding what Coach Ash had told me, and scrimmaging San Pasquale, scrimmaging Grossmont. I think that is I think that definitely helped them evaluate their team, and I think definitely is going to help in taking down Imperial. And back to 2017 rather, I do remember that, and they did handle the South. It was at Southwest El Centro, and was that the year of the acrobatic catch in the end zone too? I believe that it was. But
they've had some memorable games with teams from out there. Let's hope this one's not so memorable. Let's hope West Hills wins it, and we just remember that they won, and who knows, because they won it so comfortably. But look, Imperial, pretty great program, so not sure what's going to happen.
I think West Hills is personally, I have yet to physically see them, but I think that this is going to be a year that they're definitely going to compete up at the top for a league championship. And we already talked about the other team that I think could be involved and could be that last. Just saying, putting it out there. It could be the Burner Cup. Could be a huge playoff implications at the end of the year. Just saying. And remember that I said
championship implications. Look, right now, I think I don't know. We want to say the Valley League is wide open. I think it's starting to. It's week one. Let's not say anything, right? But West Hills, of course, El Cap, Santana, Monavista, and the other three teams got some catching up to do. One of those four teams in contention, Dave, in the Valley League, they're going to play Rancho Buena Vista, the Monavista Monarchs. Dave, you could chalk up that game against Lincoln as kind of a scrimmage, right? I mean, you had to play Lincoln last week. Monavista, they couldn't get a lot done against the Hornets. The Hornets are stacked, but Monavista certainly can gain from the experience in that game against the fourth-ranked Hornets. Now, Monavista can get back to their winning ways. I think they're going to be expected to win, even though Rancho Buena Vista is coming off a 32-0 victory over Castle Park last week. I will say that it was just the second win for the Longhorns since the start of the 2019 season. So Rancho Buena Vista has not been doing a lot of winning lately.
And there you are, a D4 team too, as I recall, correct?
I think so. Every year they change, so I'd have to look it up. But
I think I saw that.
He always tries to schedule these division opponents like this. They played the same thing 2 years ago. They played Lincoln, played Rancho Buena Vista in week 2. Well,
I want to say though some things in regards to that, and that's that. When these games were scheduled, and I'm not excusing anything for Monavista or taking anything away from their opponents or taking anything away from Lincoln. However, when they originally scheduled these games, Monavista was a different team, and then you got the COVID, and then we didn't know that they're going to get these transfers, and this. I'll call it a dream team. I mean, just from A to Z, that team is they're going to be a team that's going to be reckoned with in San Diego County. I don't know many teams that will be able to beat them, to be quite honest. And when I talk to a couple,
I can think of one specifically.
Well, we even saw Granite Hills, scrimmage Lincoln, but again, that was a scrimmage. That wasn't a a game that counted. But at any rate, I know that Coach Yamamoto really didn't lose any sleep over it. He kind of expected that exact result. The only issue, the only concern that he really has is that he was only able to suit 21 players as well. Now, with that being said, he was hoping, I think the number was 6 or 7 more possibly, that he would get back. They got the mandatory 10 practices in order to be able to play and be on the roster. So I'm hoping that they have done so and he gets a couple more players, because I think that 6 or 7 is a huge difference maker, and I think he sees that as well. So and they are Division 4. So Division 4 opponent. Is this a Monavista team from the last 4 years or so? No, I don't think they quite have the exact talent, but it is a Yamamoto team, and he does find ways to wear down the opponent, play stout defense, and let's not. And I'm hoping I didn't get a chance to talk to him. I wanted to find out about their quarterback's hand, the throwing hand, I guess. Even if they wanted to throw it,
Jaden Richardson.
Yeah, if they wanted to throw it more, I don't know the extent of the injury, but he played the rest of the game. But we all know too that they're not a pass-heavy team, so that's not a huge disadvantage. However, I am going to go out on a limb, and just what Monavista has done in the last 7 to 8 years has been just magic. You know, they lose all their non-league games, and then the one that they just recently lost all the non-league games and came in and even beat the undefeated Sultans and took the league title. So, 2 years ago, sorry. So I'm going to take Monavista on a limb, and I'm going to take them again, another low-scoring affair. I'm going to take Monavista by a point.
Yeah, Dave, Rancho Buena Vista, they had a balanced tack against Castle Park, but they were probably better than Castle Park. Rancho Buena Vista's improved, but like I said, they haven't done a lot of winning lately. As far as Monavista, I did see some good plays out there. I did mention some players in the stories, the preview. They're another team where I hope I'm identifying players correctly. I'm not confident in the roster that I have with the Monarchs, so hopefully I can get that shored up in the weeks moving forward. I know Aiden Roby, so certainly was playing some defense and can carry the ball as well. And you mentioned Richardson. So, Dave, I don't think this is any gimme right now for the Monarchs, considering Rancho Buena Vista had the big shutout win, but Monavista appears to be favored in the computers. And also, the Monarchs won the first ever meeting 28-14. That was in 2019. Like I said, they played Lincoln, lost 42-7. This is the first full season, right? 2 years ago, throughout the spring. 42-7, they lost to Lincoln, came back and beat the Longhorns 28-14. So I think it'll be a similar situation here, and I like Monavista to win by at least a touchdown and maybe 2.
Fair enough.
Okay, Dave, this should be fun. I hope somehow, some way, we get some kind of coverage from our friends. I know we will, because they did a great job reporting this last Saturday's game. But this should be really, really fun, Dave. Christian and St. Margaret's in San Juan Capistrano. These teams met in the 2014 Southern California Division semifinal, and St. Margaret's came down here and beat Christian 48-21. Christian at the time had won 20 straight games. They were 13-0. They had the second longest winning streak in the state, and St. Margaret's came in here and beat that Christian team.
Well, I got to say, first and foremost, JC is I'm going to say one of the fastest pair of hands that I've seen on that Christian roster in many years. You get the ball to JC Gunston, and he is out of there. And he just the guy's an athlete, an absolute stud, I mean, I think he's the most trustworthy. You get the ball into his hands, he's not only going to catch the ball, but the yards that he gets after the catch. Don't have that all in front of me, but
If you got that, Dave, we shouldn't even be here. I know what you're saying, though. He's explosive. Explosive with the ball in the open field and after the catch.
Right. So, I mean, and then the big, huge win. It's too bad that I was under the weather. I would have loved to have seen that. But I had my cohorts out there. I had Andy Fierro out there on the camera. And I had also Robert Davila, the father of the explosive quarterback, Jake Davila. So some great work. And we are appreciative of everything that he had done on Saturday evening. Texted Coach. I didn't know if he was in the middle of practice, but a couple of things he had to say is St. Margaret's is the best team on the schedule, and that they're the best and most talented on the schedule. And they do not, this is what he says, is they do not make mistakes. And the reason being the experiences that he's had with them when he was at Bishop's, played against them 4 years in a row, and that they were always the toughest game on the schedule. Okay. And what he says, I asked him, what's the key to defeating this team then? And he basically just said, they got to control everything we can control. We don't need to be perfect, but we need to be focused on the task at hand. We need to be physical up front, and we need to be running to the ball on defense. And as far as quarterback, Jake Davila will be the X factor, as he called it. Great, confident decisions by him will put us in the great position for the win. So a little bit to put on the junior shoulders. However, I think that Jake, now that he's had some game experience, I think he is a competitor, and I think that he's ready to take on the responsibility and put the team on his back if he needs to. And I think that with JC Gunston, I think that one of his go-to men anyway. And when those two hook up, you can forget it. St. Margaret's or not, I will tell you, you better watch out for this Christian team. And what they did last week, and let's give credit to their defense too. Some just beautiful picks, some great hits.
5 turnovers. They forced 5 turnovers, Dave. And Joey Merritt, he had that 75-yard interception return for a touchdown.
And I was just getting to that. I think that is it's not only Davila. I think that Joey Merritt has to be the other X factor, if you will, on the defense. And I think that with the two of them being childhood friends too, I think that they definitely are on the same page. And you commented on some of the great photos from the sidelines too. Coach Mitchell deep in thought with his players. But I think that this is a different Christian team than we've seen from the Coach Oliver and Beezer. Don't get me wrong. Those were great teams. But we're going a different direction now. And I'm not going to say that direction is anything but fantastic.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
I think that they have all the pieces that make up a championship team, including the coaching staff. I think that Christian could reemerge as a favorite in the league. It is a little early, but a defeat at St. Margaret's would make a huge statement.
Yeah, I don't think they're going in a different direction. I think they're going the same direction, up, up, right? With Coach Danny, Dave, they couldn't be stopped, and you know what? The Patriots admitted it after the game. They couldn't be stopped against the Rancho Christian Eagles, 50-14. And Gustin, you know, Dave, I have him right now. Certainly is probably the county's most overlooked big playmaker. Right? He caught a pair of touchdowns. He returned to kickoff for a touchdown. Now, St. Margaret's, they didn't have much of a spring. They played 2 games. They played 3 games and lost 2 of them. So they're a little bit discombobulated coming in, but they have success every single year. They always win 8 or 9 games. So that's what Coach Mitchell is talking about. They have a quarterback that is drawing some Ivy League interests. They like to pressure the quarterback. So how is Christian going to approach this game? Is it, quick passing? Is it, maybe you can elaborate a little more. I heard what you were saying, but you're right, Dave. This Patriot team has a different look about it with Mitchell. It looks dynamic, and I think Christian is going to win this one. Maybe tough. It's on the road against a great program, but I got Christian winning this one at least by a touchdown.
Now, let's not forget, too, about the double pass that came at the hands of none other than the great baseball stud on Coach Mike Mitchell's team, also playing football, Shane Bailey, threw a nice one for a touchdown. So
they told him right before the game, they said, 3rd play of the game, Shane, we're running that play. And Shane said, I didn't think we were running that play. I had to go make sure my arm was ready. If the opponent would have known, if the opponent would have said, why is he warming up? They might have known. But and he threw it to Gustin, right?
Yeah. What a great rabbit out of your hat. I mean, just to keep you're up, but I mean, just to keep the juices flowing, keep them off balance. That's another reason why I'm thinking. There's some more tricks up Coach Mitchell's sleeve that he's not going to share even with us. Coach Mitchell, you were, I think, insinuating you were going to look at the show tonight, but I know you got some more rabbits in the hat, and I wouldn't tell the media either, because I think that we're going to see some really explosive, interesting plays you've got drawn up this year.
Dave, I don't know, Coach Mitchell, I've tried when we had him on the show. I tried to pick this guy's mind. Obviously there's a script. He has a script. He must have a script for the beginning of the game, and I don't want to give this away because we get such great media from your friends over there at Christian. We got some really good access. But I took the picture of Coach Mitchell where his play card is actually hanging down on his pants, and I blew it up. I stretched it out to try to see what it said. Couldn't quite make out what it said though. So.
I will tell you right now, the difference between this team and last year, if they stay healthy, we're going to see this team in the postseason, and I think they're going to be a bigger threat, and I think they're flying under the radar right now. I'm going to look for Christian to upset St. Margaret's by a touchdown.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if it's an upset or not, but St. Margaret's certainly a great program that has had success, like I said, against Christian in the playoffs, and they have been tremendous winners. I just think Christian, like I said, has a different look about them right now. So I'm actually gonna, I would be a little bit. I wouldn't be shocked if it was a loss, but I might be a little bit disappointed if they lost this one. Against St. Margaret. So this looks, I hope we can get some coverage of that game. I'd like to see some of it for sure. Okay. Dave, these two teams are continuing to meet. They have a little series going on. They're going to meet for the 3rd straight season. And if the last 2 meetings are any indication, this game could be quite exciting at Breitbart Stadium. The Braves won a meeting this past spring. It was the season finale. The Braves got the victory, 20-14 at home. El Cajon Valley got the win. The Cardinals are making their season debut, which actually means they're facing the Braves for the second straight game.
You know, if you look at the footage that I sent that you put up on the YouTube, if you watch that, the first drive that the Braves had going looked very promising. They were establishing the run game, and I think that they if they would have stayed with it, I don't know, maybe things would have been different. I mean, that Mission Bay team was pretty good, though. I got to take my hats off that, Mission Bay was pretty phenomenal.
Clash Orsborn.
Yeah. But at the same time, the Braves did their first. I think their first series. I thought that I might be at Elkhorn Valley for at least 3 quarters or maybe into the fourth quarter. It was unfortunate. Mission Bay pretty much had the game handled by the second quarter. Probably about 5 minutes in, it was already 28-0. Unfortunately, that was the point where I think Poway and Granite Hills were tied at 0, and it was. I got there just too late for that phenomenal play to put the Eagles on top. But I don't give up on this Elkhorn team. It's one game. They Mission Bay was a little better than I thought. But I definitely wouldn't give up on this Elkhorn Valley team. They do have the talent. I think a little bit more discipline, which they get plenty of that under one of the, I think, underrated coaches in the Valley League, and always have great respect for Coach Nick Osborne and just his whole philosophy and how he teaches those kids, and that he's brought that program to where kids are interested in playing on the team, and getting some athletes out there, keeping them busy, and helping the kids out. So and we spoke with quite a few of them from the offensive line, who also are part of that D line, and they have the talent. I think that they just need to put it together. And I think their Achilles heel was some of the mistakes, shooting yourself in the foot. I think if they limit their mistakes, I think that will be a victory within itself. With that being said, the Hoover Cardinals playing them again at home. I'm going to have to go with Hoover by a touchdown.
Well, I will tell you, Dave, the Cards are in a bit of funk. They've lost 15 consecutive games, but they do have an outstanding coach. He was the coach that, kind of resurrected Kearney into getting back their winning ways over the last several years. So I think Hoover is going in the right direction, but I think Elkhorn Valley, some of the experience that they have, even though they lost those key seniors from the team that did beat Hoover in that season finale, they still have Jaheim Mendenhall. He had 4 tackles in that game, and they also have Daniel Jacobs, and he played a big role. The Braves beat Hoover back in 2019, 20-19, and Jacobs had an interception and a tackle for loss in that game. He was just a sophomore, and now we know him as the senior leader, one of the leaders of the El Cajon Valley Braves. So I'm going to be taking the Braves here, and I've got the Braves winning this one by a touchdown.
Well, that would be great. Get them back in the winning column. Oh boy,
Dave, it's the H word week. And the Holtville Vikings are coming to town against a whole new kind of Red Hawk team. And what we saw the Red Hawks do against Maranatha Christian, remember, it was not even just, 5 months ago, right, Dave? 6 months ago that the Red Hawks played Maranatha Christian. It was the first ever overtime game. Mountain Empire dominated that game against Maranatha Christian and ended up losing in overtime 12-6. One of the most frustrating losses of any team we saw in the spring. Well, they came back and beat Maranatha Christian on their home field, on Maranatha Christian's home field, 51-0 last week, behind Larry Clark, 136 yards and 3 touchdowns. Corey Van passed for 3 touchdowns. Chaz Ennis, a couple of sacks. Minus 48 yards rushing for the Eagles. Mountain Empire turned it around, Dave, by 57 points. A huge, huge turnaround. Now, is it going to be enough against still a very, very good Holtville team? Holtville still will be the favorite here. This is the rivalry game. We know Mountain Empire has had some success against Holtville in the last, not in the last couple years, but before they were kind of exchanging wins and losses.
You know, I think that I think sometimes folks don't understand the whole rivalry and how it becomes a rivalry is they exchange wins and losses, not somebody beating the snot out of somebody. I think some of the folks that are not eating and sleeping sports like as disgustingly as we do, it's pretty much 24/7. But I think that they get confused on the whole rivalry aspect. But these two for sure, ever since I started doing this and we changed some things up and did this show and a couple other that just talking to Coach Van from day one, the H word, and it is not to be spoken on campus. Holtville, I don't even think they know how to completely spell it out because it is not to be said. It is not to be spelled. It's just, it's one of those things. And both of them being out there pretty far in the sticks, you know. And let's not forget, they're both playing in an incredibly hot climate at this time of year. But I think they're both acclimated to it. And as you said, these two have met several times, and it's been a mixture. And, you know, but Mountain Empire has handily beat Holtville, a handful of teams also. And I want to say, I think this is a similar rebuild that Coach Van did with the 4 years of the other group of the Dallas Princes and the Gabe Hydorns and the big fella they had in on defense, kind of like Larry Clark. That Larry Clark kind of reminds me of him, and I wish I thought of his name. It's on the tip of my tongue. They were invited to the SDFNL a couple years ago also. That being said, I just think that after that incredible performance in all aspects, and I think this Larry Clark, I think is doing big things. I think he's going to be a highly recruited athlete as well, probably more on the defensive side. But what he does on the offense too, going both ways, rushing wise, and then I think he even had 2 sacks in that game, and we all know that he broke the record in the spring for all-time sacks.
I know he had 16 solo tackles also in the game. He was like Jefferson in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Jefferson, they were Clark jumping over the line, tackling the quarter.
Maybe
Jefferson.
So what do you think? Maybe did he have a a Trans Am maybe parked, a nice shiny Trans Am or Camaro?
I thought they only flew him in for the games. All right, Dave. Well, look, as far as Holtville, they still have won the last 3 meetings. They beat Remember, it was back in 2018, I think, that Mountain Empire last beat Holtville in a regular season game. Holtville came back and beat him in the playoffs. Ironically, these two teams actually meet quite a bit in the regular season and then once again in the playoffs. They've done it several times over the years. But look, this looks to be like a dramatically improved Mountain Empire team, off of the 0-6 spring campaign, right?
Well, let's not forget they were very competitive in a lot of these games too. Even some of those games they didn't get into the end zone. The defense was always keeping them in a handful of those games. So I think they were already on their way. It was definitely a rebuilding year last year, and they're going to continue to rebuild. But I think the Mountain Empire is just definitely heading up the ranks, and they're definitely not going backwards. And I got Mountain Empire with the upset over Holtville by a point.
Okay, well, Holtville, they defeated those Southwest Eagles 36-29. They had a strong running game. They had a good quarterback in there, Spencer Hillfiker. He passed and rushed for a score, but the Eagles, they did manage over 300 yards. I'm talking about the Southwest Eagles, 300 yards of total offense against Holtville. So,
well, did they have Larry? Did they have Larry Clark though coming off the edge?
There you go, Dave. You'll like this, and you love these stories. In 1983, these two teams met in a CIF playoff game at Valley Stadium. The Redhawks field was unplayable after a snowstorm, so they traveled to El Cajon to play their playoff game.
Boy, I'll tell you what, Granite Hills has been the multi-purpose from day one.
Well, look, Mountain Empire is the sure underdog in this game, but they look strong enough to me last week to figure that they've closed the gap. If they lost that game last time by 40 points 2 years ago, I think they've closed the gap dramatically. I'm still going to go with Holtville, and I'll go with Holtville by a touchdown, and you've got Mountain Empire.
By one.
Okay, and I'll just touch on this briefly since I really was terrible last week with my assessment of the Foothills Christian Knights. So I'll just try to reassess what's happening with them. I really don't know. I followed the game a little bit, but they lost. The Knights were on the wrong side of the scales in their return to 11-man football when they played Army-Navy last Friday night at Sayal Field, playing an 11-man contest for the first time in nearly 7 years, in their first actual game for the first time in 21 months. Foothills Christian, who had a 17-game winning streak, lost 36-0. Now, those wins, of course, came in 8-man football. The Warriors had won 3 of 4 coming in, but only 3 of it was actually 3 of their last 20 games. The Warriors had won 3 of their last 20 games, but have closed the gap a little bit and had started to do a little bit more winning. Their wins have come of late, but they had a huge size advantage over Foothills Christian. Now, this San Bernardino team, they won their opener 55-0, but they have just 2 wins over the past 2 seasons. They were 0-10 in 2019. So if I sound confused, it's because I am. I have no idea what to make of this game, but I do know that the computer ratings make the Knights a pretty big favorite. So I've got Foothills Christian winning this one by 2 touchdowns. They've never met, but Foothills Christian did play Hesperia Christian back in 2019, and then Hesperia Christian's in San Bernardino County, and Foothills Christian lost that game 38-12. So not really sure what to make of it. You don't have to predict this game. I got it wrong last week. Might have been the only game I got wrong. I don't know.
Well,
all right, Dave, go ahead.
I wanted to just add, and then maybe I think you had somebody in mind, but definitely want to say give credit where credit was due, and we haven't been doing this for a while, folks. And I'm gonna work on getting something set up for the athletes of the week once again.
Oh, okay.
But I just want to at least give credit. Sabi Oakley, I mean, just phenomenal. from this last week. So I definitely would say he was the offensive player of the week for sure in the East County. And then you had a defensive player in mind.
Well, I don't Clark
Larry Clark
with 16 tackles, but he might get more tackles than that in a game. So I don't know. There were some pretty good defensive performances. I mean, I think of Joey Merritt and his big interception return, but Larry Clark, 16 tackles. That sounded pretty good to me as well. I guess we could throw a special teams guy, in there too. Although Gio Burns had those 2 returns, but we also saw Gustin with a big return.
Right. And Gustin, you know what? I just know that he's going to be doing that on a regular basis. Otherwise, he would. I think he might at least be a runner-up, JC, every week. But I just wanted to give credit where credit was due, and great job out there, Savi, on the offensive side for the El Capitan.
Yeah, 6 touchdowns. I mean, we had some great performances, but I don't think with 6 touchdowns, right? When you throw 3, you rush for 2, and the 93-yard reception, what more could he have done? I saw him playing defense as well. So remember when we had him on the show and we were teasing, Coach said, Savvy, can you put your shirt on? But, when you're confident like he is, right, might as well just kick back and say, here I am. I'm a star.
He is an athlete. I will tell you that. But I thought we'd get that out there. You already put them up on the screens. Thank you to all our sponsors, and thank you so much for sticking with us. And anybody out there that even national sponsors, anybody that knows somebody that has a business, we're always open to that. And I personally spoke to Gary. I don't have his last name with me in my hip pocket, but Gary over at the San Diego County Officials Association. I just wanted to plug in for them. They are still looking for people. They are done with their clinics, but they still meet every other Wednesday. But he said there's definitely ways to getting some of these officials trained up through technology. Something I've considered, but I've been informed by partners that might not be my cup of tea. But
I'd just be worried that you'd eject a coach too many times or something.
Exactly.
You don't put up with any.
Yeah. So I wanted to just give that plug to Gary. That sounds like a great operation over there. They he explained it almost as like a fraternity. Great. They make great friends out there. They're almost like a brotherhood. And they are always looking for new people. They had their lowest for the spring. They had their lowest amount of new officials that came into the association of 10. And for the association, that is very anemic, and it's been years. And of course, the pandemic, there is many reasons, and not knowing if football was going to be played. These guys wanted to do something else. But I just wanted to plug them in. Great people. Had a long conversation with them. If you're ever interested, the dues aren't even too bad. You get your equipment. I believe that the dues are like $100 a year, but look them up online, and then you can get more details. Call them up and talk to Gary. Great guy, and I definitely wanted to be able to know who I'm supporting, and I definitely support the Officiating Association of San Diego.
All right, Dave, I always complain that the show's gone too long, and there we are again, but I don't care anymore. People could just forward it through and find their team and move on. Let's talk about everybody, get all these kids' names right. A couple of teams, make sure your rosters are right. I want to get these kids' names right, and Dave will help me get that squared away with a couple of teams, I'm sure. Dave, great job. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you out at the games this week, and we'll get together again and do this again, week number 3.
Yes, sir. I'll be I'll be heading over to Granite Hills and then stopping off at El Capitan.
Wow.
It'll be and then Santana, and I'll be doing the Santee.
Oh God,
Folks.
you're going to 4 great. Well, nothing we can do about Thursday. They're great games because, like they said, we're just grateful to be playing, and we're going to see, 2 really good teams and 2 teams that are hard trying. But that sounds like good combos, so we look forward to that. Great job.
Yes, sir. We will reconvene, same bat time, and maybe we, like you said, on the time. We just don't want anybody to miss out on their due,
No.
and whether that be an advertiser, a kid, or a coach, or a stat, and even especially the players, because without the players, we wouldn't be here tonight.
Yeah, I'll just keep going. We'll go 2 hours. Thanks, buddy.
All right.